Here, sign it, then I can finally be free of you." Grayson shoved the divorce agreement across the dining room table so hard that the pen rolled onto the floor. His mistress, Chloe Mercer, stood beside him with one hand resting on the curve of her pregnant belly and the other curled possessively around his shoulder. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, watched from the head of the table with the satisfied expression of a woman who believed she was witnessing a victory. My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, stood close enough to feel my dress tremble against her cheek. "You are absolutely certain?" I asked. Grayson laughed. "Don't start begging now, Ara. Chloe is young, exciting, and carrying my son. You gave me 15 years of dull dinners, a daughter, and a wife who never became anything. I deserve better." Chloe lowered her lashes, but she could not hide her smile. Eleanor tapped one red fingernail against the papers. "My son has waited long enough for a proper heir. Sign, take your clothes, and go. And don't expect us to support you after the divorce." A woman with no skills should have thought about that before becoming so unpleasant to live with. I looked down at the document. It was not the final divorce decree Grayson believed it to be. It was a marital settlement agreement and an uncontested petition that my attorney had already reviewed. Grayson would keep the heavily mortgaged house he was so proud of. I would take my personal belongings, retain sole use of the professional accounts he did not know existed, and leave with temporary physical custody of Lily until the court approved the final arrangement. He had signed every page without reading the clauses, because he was certain there was nothing I could possibly own that mattered. That certainty was the last gift I intended to give him. I picked up the pen, signed my full name, Ara Bennett Miller, and dated the final page. "There," I said, "you are free." Grayson snatched the papers from me and raised them like a trophy. Chloe kissed his cheek. Eleanor poured champagne into 3 crystal glasses without offering one to me. "Now pack your things," Grayson said. "I want you out before dinner." My bags are already in the car. For the first time, his smile slipped. I took Lily's hand. She had not cried. That frightened me more than tears would have. She simply stared at her father as if she were memorizing the face of someone she no longer recognized. "Goodbye, Grayson," I said. "You'll be back within a week," he called after me. "The moment you learn what life costs, you'll come crawling home." I did not turn around. By sunrise, Lily and I would be over the Atlantic on our way to London. By the end of the month, the life Grayson had built on lies would begin to collapse. And before the year was over, he would stand in a room he had once dreamed of controlling and beg the woman he had called useless to save him. But that night, he still believed he had won. Rain streaked across the taxi window as Chicago dissolved behind us in ribbons of red and gold. Lily rested her head on my lap, clutching a small stuffed rabbit she had owned since infancy. I watched the familiar streets disappear and thought about the first time Grayson had told me that love required sacrifice. I had been 28 then, newly promoted at a financial research firm and foolishly proud of how impressed he seemed by my work. I spoke 4 languages, could read balance sheets faster than most people read restaurant menus, and had built a reputation for finding risks hidden beneath attractive numbers. Grayson used to introduce me as the smartest woman in the room. After our wedding, that admiration changed. "2 ambitious people can't build a peaceful home," he had told me. "When we have children, one of us needs to be present. My career has the clearer path. Yours is just research." I resisted at first. Then my mother became ill, Lily was born, and every practical decision seemed to push me toward the same door. Grayson promised that the choice would make us partners. Instead, the day I resigned from my public position was the day he began treating my time as if it belonged to him. N. Eleanor reinforced the lesson whenever she visited. N. And dinner should be ready before a hard-working man comes home. N. A wife who doesn't earn money should never complain about how it is spent. N. You were fortunate Grayson married you. Don't forget that. N. Outside our house, Grayson was charming. At work, he was dependable, ambitious, and eager to impress senior executives at Meridian Trading Corporation. Inside our home, a cold shower, a wrinkled collar, or a dinner served 10 minutes late could unleash an hour of criticism. When Lily was small, I told myself I was protecting her by keeping the peace. As she grew older, I slowly understood that peace built on fear was not peace at all. N 6 months before the divorce, Grayson began coming home after midnight. He claimed he was entertaining clients. His shirts carried a perfume I did not own, and hotel receipts appeared in the pockets of jackets he expected me to dry clean. When his phone lit up one night, the message ended, "The last of my denial. N miss you. The baby kept me awake. He wants his daddy. N." Sender was KHLOE. Nye confronted Grayson the next morning after Lily left for school. He did not apologize. He leaned against the kitchen counter, folded his arms, and looked relieved. "I was going to tell you," he said. "Chloe is pregnant, and I'm going to marry her. We are married. We have a child. We have a daughter. Chloe is giving me a son, and she makes me feel alive. You make me feel like I'm already old. There are sentences that injure you, and there are sentences that wake you. That one did both. I went to Eleanor because some part of me still believed a grandmother would care about the damage being done to Lily. Eleanor listened, then smiled. "A baby boy?" she said. "Then perhaps this is a blessing. You should make the separation easy instead of embarrassing everyone." After that, the cruelty became public inside our home. Grayson brought Chloe to dinner. Eleanor discussed nursery colors in front of Lily. They cut the household budget, mocked my clothes, and acted as though I were an unwelcome guest in rooms I had cleaned, furnished, and held together for 15 years. One evening, I found Lily sitting on the bathroom floor with her hands over her ears while Grayson and Eleanor argued about how quickly I could be removed from the house. "Mommy," she whispered, "if I had been a boy, would Daddy still love us?" That was the moment I stopped trying to save my marriage. I began preparing in silence. I contacted a family attorney, renewed Lily's passport, collected school and medical records, and documented every threat Grayson made about refusing support. The divorce papers he eventually presented were not a surprise. I had seen drafts through my attorney days earlier. I allowed Grayson to believe the idea, the timing, and the victory were all his because arrogance makes careless people predictable. The taxi turned toward O'Hare. Lily stirred and looked up at me. "Are we really going to London?" "Yes." "For a vacation?" I brushed her hair away from her eyes. "For a new beginning." She considered that with the solemn concentration only a child can give to an adult answer. "Will Daddy come?" "No, sweetheart." "Will Grandma?" "No." Lily looked back at the city lights, then settled against me again. "Good," she whispered. "You don't cry when they're not there." I pressed my lips to the top of her head and stared out the window until my own reflection blurred. The truth was that Grayson never knew who he had married. For 15 years, while he told people I had abandoned my ambitions, I had continued working under my maiden name. My former mentor, Alistair Vance, had left our firm to establish Vance Capital, a London-based investment fund. He asked me to consult remotely on international market risks. At first, I worked 5 hours a week. Eventually, major clients requested my analyses by name, though few knew who A. Bennett was. I worked after midnight, during school hours, and on weekends when Grayson was playing golf. I translated regulatory filings, traced corporate structures, and identified investments that later earned Vance Capital hundreds of millions of dollars. My fees accumulated in a separate account and a conservative trust that I had created for Lily. I never hid illegal money from my husband. I maintained records, paid taxes, and followed my attorney's advice. I hid my professional identity because every time I attempted to discuss returning to work, Grayson accused me of neglecting the family. Part of me was ashamed that I had kept such a large truth buried for so long. Another part understood that the secret had preserved the piece of myself Grayson could not control. My phone vibrated as the taxi reached the terminal. The caller was Arthur Miller, Grayson's father. Arthur had spent most of our marriage hiding behind silence. He rarely insulted me directly, but he never interrupted Eleanor when she did. At the dining room table that evening, he had disappeared into his study before I signed the agreement. His refusal to choose had always protected the cruelest person in the room. "Ara," he said when I answered. "Grayson says you took Lily and left. He told us to leave. He is angry. People say things when they're angry." You shouldn't make a permanent decision because of one mistake. Chloe is pregnant. He plans to marry her. That is not one mistake. Arthur, your leaving will cause a scandal. Come back tomorrow. I will speak to him. We can offer the young woman money and make this disappear. And then what? I return to a husband who humiliated me in front of our daughter? Think practically. Grayson says he won't pay alimony. Raising Lily alone will be expensive, and you have been out of the workforce for 15 years. Eleanor is right about one thing. Pride does not pay bills. His concern was not for me or Lily. It was for the Miller name, for neighbors, colleagues, and country club friends who might discover that the family was not as respectable as it pretended to be. Arthur, I did think practically, I said. That is why I am leaving. Where are you? Somewhere your son cannot order me around. Don't be dramatic. Bring Lily home. Lily is with her home. I ended the call before he could answer. For a moment, my hand shook around the phone. Then Lily slipped her fingers into mine. Was that Grandpa? Yes. Was he mad? He was worried about the wrong things. At the check-in desk, I handed over our passports. The agent printed our boarding passes, and the ordinary sound of paper sliding from a machine felt like a gate opening. Mommy, Lily said as we moved toward security, are you scared? I could have lied. Instead, I nodded. A little. Me too. We can be scared together. She smiled for the first time that night. Then we are still brave. I squeezed her hand. Exactly. We had almost reached our gate when Lily asked for something to eat. I led her into a small shop where she chose a pink box of chocolate biscuits. As I reached for my wallet, a familiar voice rose behind us. Well, this is embarrassing. Belle Miller stood at the entrance in a cream designer coat, one hand on the handle of a silver suitcase. Grayson's younger sister had Eleanor's sharp eyes and none of Arthur's restraint. She was flying to Hawaii with friends, a trip she had described for weeks as though crossing an ocean were proof of personal importance. Grayson said you ran away, she continued. I thought he was exaggerating. We did not run away. Your brother ended the marriage. Belle glanced at Lily, then lowered her voice just enough to pretend she was being considerate. He chose someone younger. It happens. Chloe is giving the family what you couldn't. You should accept that with dignity. Do not discuss this in front of my daughter. I'm only being honest. Poor Lily will understand soon enough. You have no job, no recent experience, and no husband. How long do you think you can survive in London? A month? 2? Lily's fingers tightened around mine. Belle laughed and adjusted the gold chain of her handbag. When you call Grayson for money, don't expect him to be generous. Chloe and the baby come first now. I had spent years shrinking myself to prevent scenes like this. I had apologized when I was insulted, smiled when I wanted to leave, and accepted humiliation because I feared that resistance would make the house more hostile for Lily. Standing in that airport, I finally saw the cost of my silence. Belle did not mistake it for kindness. She mistook it for permission. You are right about one thing, I said. Lily will understand soon enough. She will understand who protected her and who tried to make her feel unwanted. I suggest you think carefully about which side of that memory you want to occupy. Belle's smile vanished. I paid for the biscuits and walked away. Behind us, she called. You still think you're better than us? I did not answer. I no longer needed to be better than any of them. I only needed to be free. Our flight departed shortly after midnight. As Chicago receded beneath a field of clouds, I opened the secure application Alistair Vance had installed on my phone years earlier. There was one unread message from him. Your position in London is ready whenever you are. Richard Stanley will coordinate everything. You and Lily will be safe. I typed a reply. We are in the air. I am ready to return full-time. His response arrived before I put the phone into airplane mode. Welcome back, Ara. Lily slept for most of the flight. I did not. I watched the black Atlantic below us and reviewed the report I had sent Vance 2 weeks earlier. It concerned Meridian Trading Corporation, Grayson's employer and one of Vance Capital's largest American investments. I had not set out to investigate my husband. A shipping sector client had asked me to evaluate unusual payments linked to Meridian's emerging markets division. The project manager's initials were GM. At first, I assumed the similarity was coincidence. Then I found an authorization memo containing Grayson's full name. The transfers were not yet proof of a crime. They could have been legitimate investments routed through poorly structured intermediaries. But the amounts were too large. The due diligence records were thin, and 3 receiving companies shared variations of the same London mailing address. I warned Vance Capital that Meridian might be exposed to fraud. I did not tell Alistair that the employee approving the transactions was my husband until I had enough evidence to justify the concern. Alistair advised me to disclose the personal conflict and step away from any formal decision. I did. Independent auditors took over. My role was limited to explaining the patterns I had already identified. I wanted the truth uncovered, but I refused to manufacture Grayson's downfall. If he had acted honestly, the audit would clear him. If he had not, the consequences would belong to him. That distinction mattered to me. Revenge had occupied my imagination during the worst nights of my marriage. But revenge was a poor foundation for a new life. I wanted accountability. More than that, I wanted Lily to grow up knowing that strength did not require becoming cruel. We landed at Heathrow beneath a low gray sky. Cold rain shimmered across the runway, and the terminal seemed to stretch for miles. Lily was tired and pale by the time we collected our luggage. I expected to see a driver holding a sign with my professional name, but no one was waiting in the arrivals hall. My phone had no service. The American Family Plan was in Grayson's name, and he had already suspended my line. I connected to airport Wi-Fi and found 12 messages. 3 were from Grayson. Belle told me where you went. I canceled the cards connected to my accounts. I moved the joint balance before you could steal it. When you are ready to apologize, call me. Maybe I will pay for your flight home. Eleanor had left a voicemail. I hope one night in a foreign city teaches you some gratitude, she said. You took our granddaughter without permission and tried to live on Grayson's money. You have always been selfish. I saved every message for my attorney. There should have been an email from Richard Stanley, but the terminal Wi-Fi kept dropping. I tried the Secure app, and it froze at the authentication screen because my registered phone number was inactive. The driver had probably waited during our 2-hour delay and then left when he could not reach me. It was an inconvenience, not a catastrophe. My personal funds were safe, but the bank required a security token that was waiting in the London office. The cards in my wallet belonged to our joint household accounts, and Grayson had canceled them. I had several $100s in cash, enough for transportation and food. I decided to take a taxi to the hotel listed in Alistair's original itinerary and resolve everything from there. At the hotel, the receptionist searched for my reservation twice. I'm sorry, Ms. Miller. The booking was guaranteed using a card ending in 4418, and that card has been declined. Because the guest services team could not reach you, the reservation was released this afternoon. We are fully booked tonight. Could I pay cash for another room? I am afraid we require a valid card for incidentals. There is a conference in the city, so nearby hotels may also be difficult. Lily leaned against my side. Mommy, I'm cold. I thanked the receptionist and moved to a corner of the lobby. My tired mind struggled to remember Richard's direct number. It was stored inside the secure application I could not open. Alistair's office number went to an automated weekend message. I tried calling my American bank over internet service, but the connection failed before an agent answered. For 15 minutes, I stood in the bright marble lobby while travelers passed with dry coats and room keys. Grayson's message burned in my mind. One night in a foreign city would teach me gratitude. He had not simply protected money he believed was his. He had waited until Lily and I were in transit, then tried to make us frightened enough to return. The old Ara might have wondered whether she deserved it. The woman standing in that lobby knew better. Come on, I told Lily. We're going to find somewhere warm while I make a few calls. Outside, the rain had strengthened. We walked beneath a narrow awning toward a taxi stand, but a traffic disruption had left the curb empty. I wrapped my scarf around Lily and pulled her against me. She did not complain, which made my guilt sharper. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? This was supposed to be easier. It's only rain. I laughed despite myself. Only rain. Headlights swept across the wet pavement. A black sedan drew to the curb, and a man stepped out carrying an umbrella. He was in his late 50s, with silver at his temples and the calm posture of someone accustomed to being listened to. Ara Bennett? Relief weakened my knees. Mr. Stanley. Richard Stanley, managing director of Vance Capital's American operations, crossed the pavement and placed the umbrella over Lily before himself. "Thank God," he said. "We have been searching for you for 3 hours. Your flight information changed, your phone was disconnected, and the hotel said the booking had failed. Alistair was ready to call every hospital in London." He removed his cashmere coat and wrapped it around Lily's shoulders. "I'm sorry," I said. Grayson suspended the phone line and canceled the household cards. Richard's expression hardened. "He knew you were traveling with his daughter?" "Yes." "Then we will make sure your attorney has those messages. Please get in the car before both of you become ill." The sedan was warm, and Lily fell asleep against me within minutes. Richard handed me a portable charger and a small security device bearing the Vance Capital logo. "This will restore access to your professional accounts," he said. "Alistair instructed us to have it ready. Your new phone is at the townhouse." "Townhouse?" "The firm maintains a residence for executives relocating to London. You may use it until you choose your own home. It has 3 bedrooms, proper security, and a garden. There is also a school 2 streets away that Alistair believes would suit Lily, although I told him choosing a school before you landed might be overenthusiastic." I looked down at my sleeping daughter. Less than an hour earlier, she had been shivering beneath an awning. Now a home, a school, and a position waited for us. The contrast left me too overwhelmed to speak. Richard allowed the silence to settle before continuing. "There is something else you should know. The independent audit of Meridian has accelerated. The questionable transfers you identified continued after your initial report. 2 more payments were authorized this week, both by Grayson." "How much?" "Just over $5 million in total." I closed my eyes. "The receiving entities lead back to a man named Vincent Russo," Richard said. "He has used shell companies in several investment frauds, but authorities have never had enough evidence to connect the network. We may have that evidence now." "Does Grayson know Russo?" "We do not know, but Russo does know Chloe Mercer." I opened my eyes. Richard passed me a tablet. On the screen was a photograph of Chloe leaving a restaurant with an older, broad-shouldered man. The date in the corner was 4 months before Grayson claimed their relationship had begun. Another photograph showed them entering a medical building together. "Our investigators found that Chloe has been associated with Russo for at least 2 years, Richard said. "She may have introduced Grayson to what he believed was an exclusive investment opportunity. There is also a discrepancy in the timeline of her pregnancy." The memory of Chloe's hand on her belly returned to me. Her smile had been triumphant, almost relieved, when I signed the papers. "How large a discrepancy?" "Enough that Grayson is unlikely to be the father. We will not speculate beyond the evidence, but you should be prepared for the personal side of this case to become ugly." I handed the tablet back. My first emotion was not satisfaction, it was grief. Grayson had destroyed our daughter's home for a fantasy designed by people who saw his vanity as an opening. Yet being deceived did not make him innocent. Chloe had not forced him to betray his family, steal company money, or strand his child in a foreign city. "What does Alistair want me to do?" I asked. "Rest tonight. Meet him Monday. After that, he wants you to join the forensic team as a consultant, subject to strict conflict controls. You will analyze the structures, but independent counsel will approve every action. And if the evidence leads to Grayson, then it leads to Grayson." The city unfolded beyond the rain-streaked windows. London did not look like an escape anymore. It looked like the place where I would finally stop hiding. The townhouse stood on a quiet street lined with brick facades and plane trees. Inside, a fire glowed in the sitting room. The kitchen held fresh food. The bedrooms had clean linens, and a small vase of yellow tulips waited on the dining table beside a handwritten note from Alistair. "No more ghosts. It is time the world knows your name." I carried Lily upstairs and tucked her into bed. She opened her eyes as I pulled the blanket over her. "Is this our house?" "For now." "Do they know we're here?" I knew who she meant. "No, and they cannot come in." Her shoulders relaxed. "Then I like it." When she fell asleep, I stood at the bedroom window and watched rain silver the empty street. Somewhere across the Atlantic, Grayson was probably celebrating. He believed he had removed a burden from his life. He had no idea he had just released the only person who understood exactly where his secrets were buried. Monday morning arrived, bright and cold. Richard's driver took me through the city of London to a glass tower overlooking the Thames. I had contributed to Vance Capital for 15 years, yet I had never walked through its front doors as an employee. My work had traveled there without me, encrypted and unsigned except for the professional name, A. Bennett. The receptionist rose when I entered. "Ms. Bennett, welcome to London. Mr. Vance is expecting you." Hearing my maiden name spoken in that lobby felt like hearing my own voice after a long silence. Alistair Vance waited in a conference room on the top floor. He was 67, tall and spare, with white hair and the patient gaze of a man who had spent his career allowing other people to reveal more than they intended. He crossed the room and embraced me before I could offer a formal greeting. "I should have brought you here years ago," he said. "I should have come." "Perhaps. But survival rarely looks elegant while one is doing it. Sit down. Tell me about Lily." I explained that she was tired but excited, that we had visited the school near the townhouse, and that she had chosen the smallest bedroom because its window faced the garden. Only after he knew she was safe did Alistair turn to business. "Your conflict disclosure is on file," he said. "Outside counsel will direct the Meridian investigation. You will not decide whether your husband is disciplined, charged, or sued. Your job is to follow the money and explain what you find. Can you do that without protecting him or pursuing him?" "Yes." "Are you certain?" I thought about the cancelled cards, Lily beneath the airport awning, and 15 years of being told my work had no value. Anger was present, but beneath it was something steadier. "I do not need to ruin Grayson," I said. "I need the truth recorded accurately. What happens after that should depend on what he did." Alistair nodded. "That is why I trust you." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was an employment agreement appointing me Senior Director of Global Risk Analysis. The salary was generous, the benefits included relocation support and school fees, and the final page gave me authority to build my own team. "This is not payment for the Meridian report," he said. "It is recognition of 15 years of work we should have recognized publicly long ago." My eyes stung. I had imagined this moment many times while working alone in a dark kitchen, closing spreadsheets at the sound of Grayson's key in the door. In those fantasies, I felt triumphant. In reality, I felt the weight of the years I had hidden. "Thank you," I said. "I won't waste the opportunity." "You never wasted anything, Ara. Other people failed to see what you were building." The forensic team occupied a secure room 2 floors below. For 3 days, we mapped Meridian's payments across 14 companies in 6 jurisdictions. Grayson had described the transfers as investments in shipping technology. The companies had websites, registered directors, and professionally drafted contracts. On the surface, the arrangement looked sophisticated.n, and beneath the surface, it was hollow.n. Several directors were nominees connected to Vincent Russo. The companies invoiced one another for vague consulting services, moving funds in circles until the original source became difficult to recognize. A Bahamas entity called North Star Maritime received the largest payments. Chloe Mercer had been listed as its administrative contact 9 months earlier, then removed shortly before she met Grayson.n there, I said, pointing to a timestamp buried in a document's metadata. This contract was supposedly created in March, but the underlying file was generated in June, 2 days after Meridian's compliance team requested proof of due diligence. And none of the forensic accountants leaned closer. So the supporting contract was backdated. And yes, and the user who uploaded it signed in with Grayson's credentials. And yeah, found more. He had overridden compliance warnings, split transfers into amounts below internal review thresholds, and used a personal email account to communicate with Russo. In one message, Grayson demanded an increased return because he had risked everything to keep the deal away from conservative people at Meridian.n. The phrase revealed him more clearly than any balance sheet could. He wanted to believe rules were for timid people and that secrecy proved intelligence. Russo had praised his courage, appealed to his resentment, and promised a private fortune once the project matured. Chloe had done the same in his personal life. And he was not only stealing, Richard said. He thought he was investing the stolen money and would replace it before anyone noticed. That is what he will tell himself, I replied. But he approved false records and moved funds he had no authority to use. Believing he would profit later does not make it less deliberate. An outside counsel agreed. The evidence was sent to Meridian's audit committee, its insurers, and federal authorities. No announcement was made. Grayson remained at work while investigators preserved records and traced assets. Every day he believed he was still in control increased the amount of evidence he created. Across the ocean, the Miller family began its new life without me. Chloe moved into the house before our divorce petition had even reached the court. She replaced family photographs with maternity portraits and converted Lily's bedroom into a nursery, despite Grayson's promise that Lily could keep the room for visits. Eleanor arrived each morning with catalogs of expensive furniture. Belle posted photographs of champagne brunches with captions about fresh beginnings and protecting family happiness. Grayson paid for everything with confidence he had not earned. He wore a new watch worth nearly $20,000. He leased a larger car, ordered a custom crib from Italy, and placed a deposit on a penthouse he planned to buy after his secret investment paid out. Ara held me back, he told Chloe one evening. She was terrified of risk. You believe in me. Chloe curled against him on the sofa. Because I know you're meant for more. Vincent says men like you build empires while ordinary employees wait for permission. Vincent talks too much. He's helping us. Once North Star closes the next round, you'll have enough to leave Meridian and start your own company. Grayson looked toward the nursery and smiled. My son will inherit something worth having. Eleanor, who was unpacking silver-plated baby gifts nearby, added, Not like poor Lily. Ara will probably raise her in some tiny rented room. None of them mentioned that I had paid the property taxes when Grayson's salary fell short, covered Belle's emergency credit card bills twice, and transferred money to Arthur during a medical crisis. They had accepted my help when it was useful, then rewritten every contribution as Grayson's generosity. Their celebration lasted 9 days. On the 10th, Chloe attended an ultrasound appointment at a private clinic. She expected to go alone, but Eleanor insisted on accompanying her. Grayson came too, eager to record a video of what he called the Miller Air. The doctor dimmed the room and moved the ultrasound probe across Chloe's abdomen. A clear profile appeared on the monitor. The baby is developing well, he said. Measurements are consistent with 21 weeks. Grayson's phone lowered. 21? Approximately. There is always a margin of several days, but the fetal measurements are quite consistent. Eleanor leaned forward. That would be more than 5 months. Chloe told us she was just entering her 4th. Chloe's face tightened. He means gestational age. It's calculated differently. That is true, the doctor said carefully, but only by about 2 weeks. According to the history you gave today, the dates do not match the scan. Grayson stared at Chloe. They had first slept together 14 weeks earlier. Even allowing for the way pregnancy was dated, the child had been conceived before their affair began. Check again, Chloe said. The machine must be wrong. The doctor looked at her chart. You had an earlier scan at our affiliated clinic in April. That scan also supports the current dating. Would you like me to retrieve it? Chloe sat up too quickly, pulling the paper sheet over her stomach. No, that was a mistake. Eleanor's voice sharpened. You told us this was your first appointment. I forgot. You forgot an ultrasound? Before Chloe could answer, Grayson's phone rang. His department director was calling. Miller, the man said when Grayson answered, loud enough for Eleanor to hear in the quiet room. Return to the office immediately. Do not access your computer from outside the building. Do not call anyone on your team. Come directly to the 18th floor conference room. What's happened? The audit committee has questions about North Star Maritime. Grayson's face emptied. Chloe saw the change and reached for him. What is it? He pulled away. Who is the father? You are. The dates say otherwise. Grayson, don't leave me here with your mother acting crazy. Eleanor made a sound of outrage, but Grayson was already at the door. He did not look back. At Meridian headquarters, 2 outside lawyers and the head of internal audit waited for him. His laptop sat sealed inside an evidence bag. A printed copy of the North Star investment agreement lay on the table. This is highly irregular, Grayson said, forcing a laugh. If someone had concerns, they should have come to me. I manage the project. That is precisely why we came to you, the lead auditor replied. Did you authorize these transfers? Yes, within my delegated authority. Your authority is capped at $250,000 without secondary approval. These transfers total more than $5 million. They were staged investments. Each one fell within my limit. They were split across related entities to evade the limit. The entities were not disclosed as related. Grayson leaned back. That is an interpretation. The lawyer placed several emails beside the agreement. Did you use a private account to communicate with Vincent Russo? He is a consultant. Did he promise you a personal share of North Star? No. The lawyer turned over an email in which Russo offered Grayson 12% of a future holding company once Meridian completed its investment. This email came from your account, she said. It is taken out of context. Then provide the context. For the first time, Grayson had none. The interview lasted 3 hours. He blamed junior staff, claimed the due diligence documents had been prepared by outside consultants, and insisted that Meridian would earn enormous returns if the auditors did not destroy the deal through panic. Every explanation contradicted something he had said earlier. At last, the lead auditor closed the file. You are suspended effective immediately. You may not enter Meridian premises or contact employees regarding this investigation. Your access credentials have been revoked. Grayson rose. You cannot suspend me over a misunderstanding. Do you know how valuable I am to this company? At present, we know exactly how expensive you may be. Security will escort you out. 2 floors of employees watched Grayson leave carrying a cardboard box. He kept his chin high until the elevator doors closed. Then he called Russo. The number went to voicemail. He called Chloe. She did not answer. When he reached home, Eleanor was waiting in the foyer with her arms folded. Chloe stood near the staircase, mascara streaked beneath her eyes. Tell him, Eleanor demanded. There's nothing to tell, Chloe said. The doctor is wrong. Grayson set the cardboard box on the floor. Who took you to the first scan? A friend? What friend? Why are you interrogating me? I'm carrying your baby. You were pregnant before we slept together. Chloe's tears stopped instantly. And you were married when we slept together. I didn't hear you worrying about dates then. The cruelty of the answer stunned even Eleanor. Grayson stepped closer. Is Vincent Russo the father? Chloe's eyes flickered. That single movement told him more than a confession. You knew him before me, he said. You introduced me to North Star. You said he was your former employer. He was. Was he also your lover? Grayson, calm down. We need each other right now. I don't need you. Your company is investigating North Star, isn't it? Then you need Vincent to keep quiet, and Vincent needs me. If you throw me out, I have no reason to protect you. Eleanor gripped the banister. Protect him from what? Chloe looked from mother to son and realized fear was more useful than denial. From the truth, she said. Grayson didn't just approve those investments. He expected to own part of the company. If Meridian knows that, he could go to prison. The house fell silent. At that same hour in London, I was standing before a wall of screens while the forensic team recovered the final document we needed. It was a draft ownership schedule for North Star's future parent company. Grayson Miller was listed as a 12% beneficiary through a trust codenamed GM Legacy. The document proved motive. He had not been an innocent employee fooled by a vendor. He had diverted his employer's money into a structure designed to enrich him personally. Send it to outside counsel, I said. Richard studied me. Are you all right? No, I answered honestly, but send it anyway. For the next 2 weeks, I divided my life between the investigation and Lily. In the mornings, I walked her to school along a street where shopkeepers were beginning to recognize us. In the evenings, we ate dinner at a small kitchen table overlooking the garden. She told me about new classmates, unfamiliar words, and a teacher who kept a sleepy tortoise in the classroom. I told her nothing about audits, shell companies, or the father who had not called to ask whether she was safe. Her cheerfulness sometimes broke without warning. A dropped plate made her flinch. If I worked later than expected, she waited by the front window instead of playing. One night, I found her packing her rabbit and 2 shirts into her school bag. What are you doing? I asked. Getting ready. For what? She kept folding the same shirt. In case they tell us to leave this house too. I sat on the floor beside her. No one is going to throw us out. Daddy said it was his house, so we had to go. Mr. Vance says this is his house. What if he gets mad? The question showed me how deeply Grayson's behavior had entered her understanding of safety. In Lily's world, a home belonged to whoever had the power to take it away. Mr. Vance cannot send us into the street, I said. The firm gave me a written lease, and I pay rent as part of my employment agreement. Soon, we'll choose a place that belongs to us. But even if we move, you and I stay together. Home is not a person who can stop loving you when he gets angry. Promise? I promise. I did not promise that her father would become better. That promise was not mine to make. The following morning, I arranged counseling for both of us. I had spent years believing endurance was strength. I now understood that asking for help could be a form of strength too. In Chicago, Grayson was discovering that denial could not stop a legal process. Meridian's lawyers notified federal authorities, its insurer, and the banks that had handled the North Star transfers. A judge approved temporary restraints on accounts linked to Russo after prosecutors submitted evidence that he was preparing to move the money again. The order did not come from me or Vance Capital. It came from a court after independent investigators verified the records. Russo learned about the freeze while boarding a private charter at a small airfield outside Indiana. Agents arrested him before the plane moved. The duffel bag in his possession contained 3 passports, more than $100,000 in cash, and a drive storing client files from earlier schemes. That drive opened the entire case. Chloe's name appeared in messages dating back 2 years. She had approached executives at Russo's direction, built romantic relationships, and introduced investment opportunities tailored to their insecurities. Grayson had been selected because he was ambitious, resentful, and able to authorize moderate payments. Once Chloe learned he was married to a financially dependent wife, Russo encouraged her to become pregnant and claim the child was Grayson's. The pregnancy would create urgency, isolate him from his family, and give Chloe leverage if the scheme failed. The messages never identified the baby's biological father. Russo wrote only that paternity did not matter as long as Grayson believed it. After his arrest, prosecutors offered Chloe a chance to cooperate. She refused at first. Then Russo's attorney released a statement describing her as a manipulative associate who had acted independently. The man she had trusted was preparing to sacrifice her. She called Grayson from a hotel because Eleanor had thrown her out of the house. "We need to tell the same story," she said. "Vincent designed the documents. You and I thought the investment was legitimate. You knew it wasn't. So did you. I believed the company would make money. You believed you would make money. Don't pretend this is about Meridian. Who is the baby's father? Does it matter now? It destroyed my marriage." Chloe laughed, a bitter sound stripped of charm. "I didn't destroy your marriage. I gave you an excuse to do what you wanted. You were already complaining about Ara the night we met. You called her boring, said she had no income, and promised the house would be yours after a divorce. I only listened. You lied to me. And you lied to your wife, your company, and yourself. At least I know what I am." Grayson ended the call, but her words followed him through the empty house. The mansion no longer felt like a victory. Without my daily care, unopened mail collected on the console, food spoiled in the refrigerator, and dust settled over the nursery furniture. More importantly, bills began to arrive that Grayson had never understood. The property tax installment was overdue. Belle's credit card balance had been paid for months through automatic transfers that had stopped. A loan secured by Arthur and Eleanor's house carried a payment larger than Arthur's pension. Arthur summoned the family to the dining room where I had signed the settlement agreement. He spread bank statements across the table. "What are these loans?" Eleanor asked. Arthur looked at Grayson. "Your son said he had access to an investment paying 20% within 6 months. He asked us to guarantee a business line of credit." "How much?" $1.2 million. Eleanor sat down abruptly. "You put our house against one of Grayson's investments?" He said the risk was temporary. Grayson rubbed both hands over his face. North Star was supposed to close another funding round. Once it did, I could repay everything. "North Star is the company under investigation," Belle said. "The one connected to Chloe's criminal boyfriend." No one corrected her description of Russo. Arthur pointed to another statement. "The bank has frozen disbursements and demanded updated collateral information." If the loan defaults, we lose the house. Then sell this house, Eleanor said, gesturing at the walls around them. Grayson kept it in the divorce. It must be worth a fortune. The house was worth a fortune. It also carried a first mortgage, a home equity line, and unpaid taxes. Grayson had borrowed against nearly every dollar of value. A forced sale would leave little after costs. How could you let this happen? Belle screamed at him. Let it happen? You spent $30,000 last year and expected me to cover it. Mom ordered furniture. Dad wanted his golf club membership. Everyone treated me like a bank. Because you told us you were successful, Eleanor said. I was successful until Ara poisoned the company against me. Arthur looked up. What did you say? Grayson told them about the forensic report and the author listed as a Bennett. He explained that his former wife had secretly worked for Vance Capital and helped trace the money. Eleanor refused to believe it. Ara could barely manage the online banking. She managed it because none of you ever did, Arthur said quietly. He was staring at a series of transfers into the household account. Each carried the name Bennett Advisory Services. The payments had begun 14 years earlier and increased whenever family expenses rose. What is Bennett Advisory? Belle asked. Arthur turned the screen toward them. Ara's company. The room went still. Over 14 years, I had transferred nearly $900,000 into household and family expenses. Some paid Lily's school fees and medical bills. Some covered the mortgage during Grayson's lean years. Some rescued Arthur after heart surgery. Far too much had financed Eleanor's renovations and Belle's emergencies. Grayson had seen the deposits, but accepted my explanation that they came from consulting work and a small inheritance. Because he considered anything I did unimportant, he never asked how large the work had become. She told me it was occasional research, he said. Arthur gave a humorless laugh. And you were happy to spend it while calling her dependent? Eleanor pushed away from the table. If she earned that much, she should have told us. Hiding money from a family is dishonest. She did tell Grayson she was consulting, Arthur replied. We were the ones who decided it could not be valuable because she did it from home. It was the first time Arthur had included himself in the blame. The admission arrived too late to protect me, but not too late to wound him. Belle searched through the statements with increasing panic. Will her transfers start again? Grayson stared at his sister. What? Belle said. Some of my cards are in collection. She paid them before. She is never paying another bill for this family, Arthur said. Eleanor's face hardened. Then we will demand what she owes us. She took Lily and left the country. A judge will make her come back. Grayson's family attorney refused to support that fantasy. The signed agreement permitted Lily's temporary relocation, and written messages showed that Grayson knew about the trip. More damaging, he had canceled access to joint funds while his child was traveling, then threatened to let them remain stranded unless I apologized. My attorney filed the messages with the court and requested an emergency child support order. For the first time since demanding the divorce, Grayson called me. I let it ring twice before answering. What do you want? You made me look like a monster to the court. I submitted your own words. You knew I was angry. You knew Lily was with me. He was silent for several seconds. Is she there? She's at school. School? You enrolled her without asking me? The temporary order gives me authority to make educational decisions. Your attorney has a copy. You planned all this. I planned to keep our daughter safe. You planned a nursery with your mistress while Lily's clothes were still in her room. Chloe lied about the baby. I know. Of course you know. Your people investigated her. An independent forensic investigation identified her connection to the companies receiving Meridian's money. Her pregnancy became relevant because she used it to manipulate you. You wanted this to happen. I wanted you to leave me alone. You chose everything that happened after that. His voice weakened. Ara, I may be charged. Then you need a criminal attorney, not your ex-wife. I was deceived. So was I. The difference is that I did not steal $5 million when I discovered it. He began to cry. The sound startled me, not because I had never heard Grayson upset, but because his tears had always been angry before. These were frightened. Tell them I didn't understand, he said. You can explain that. I'm not a financial expert. They respect you. You signed false documents, overrode warnings, and accepted a secret ownership interest. What exactly would you like me to explain? That I'm Lily's father. You remembered that too late. I ended the call. My hands trembled afterward, but I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. For years, I had wanted Grayson to understand the harm he caused. Now he understood only that the consequences had reached him. Remorse and fear could sound similar, but they were not the same. That evening, Lily and I made omelets for dinner. She stood on a wooden stool and insisted on cracking the eggs herself. Half a shell fell into the bowl, and we both laughed while trying to retrieve it. "Did Daddy call?" she asked. I stopped stirring. "Yes." "Did he say sorry?" Children often ask the question adults spend years avoiding. "Not yet," I said. "Maybe he doesn't know how." "Maybe." Lily sprinkled too much cheese into the pan. "You can teach him. It isn't my job to teach him anymore." She thought about that, then nodded. "Okay. We can eat without him." We carried our plates to the table. Outside, rain began tapping against the kitchen windows. This time, we were warm, and no one could take the room from us. 3 days later, federal agents arrested Grayson at his attorney's office on charges of wire fraud, conspiracy, and theft from an employee benefit investment pool that Meridian had used to fund part of the North Star transaction. The last charge transformed the case from a corporate scandal into a public outrage. The money had not been abstract company capital. Some of it belonged to employees' retirement plans. News crews waited outside the courthouse. Grayson covered his face as he was led inside. Meridian fired him for cause, sued him for breach of fiduciary duty, and announced a restitution plan for affected employees. The judge released him on strict conditions pending trial after his parents pledged the remaining equity in their home. He had to surrender his passport, wear an electronic monitor, and avoid contact with Russo or Chloe except through counsel.n. Narther mortgaged the last unencumbered portion of his property to pay the first legal retainer. Eleanor sold jewelry. Belle's Hawaii friends stopped answering her messages after photographs of Grayson's arrest appeared online. And their world did not vanish in one dramatic explosion. It disappeared invoice by invoice, hearing by hearing, and truth by truth. And Meridian suffered with them. Its share price fell, customers delayed contracts, and hundreds of employees feared that Grayson's scheme would cost them their jobs. Vance Capital was the company's largest institutional investor, but did not yet control it. Alistair could have sold the fund's stake and allowed the company to collapse. Instead, he proposed a rescue.n. Vance Capital would inject new money, replace the directors who had ignored compliance warnings, and guarantee that employee retirement accounts were made whole while insurers and courts pursued the responsible parties. Other shareholders agreed because no better offer existed. Within 6 weeks, Vance Capital held a controlling interest. Alistair asked me to lead the restructuring team. "You understand Meridian's weaknesses better than anyone," he said, "and its employees already know your report protected their pensions. They also know I was married to the man who caused the loss. That is not disqualifying. Hiding it would have been. You disclosed the relationship before the investigation began, stepped away from disciplinary decisions, and worked under outside supervision. The independent board reviewed every action. Nye looked through the glass wall of his office at London, spread beneath a pale morning sky. The offer would require me to spend several months in Chicago. Lily had only just begun to feel settled. "I will do it if the position is based in London after the initial turnaround and if my travel is limited," I said. "I will not rebuild a company by becoming absent from my daughter's life." Alistair smiled. "Those are the priorities of a good executive." "Considerate," agreed. The board appointed me Chief Restructuring Officer, with authority over risk, compliance, and financial recovery. The announcement used my full professional name, Ara Bennett, and included a short account of my previous work. News outlets focused on the irony that the analyst who exposed Meridian's largest internal fraud had once been married to the employee at its center. I refused interview requests about the divorce and spoke only about protecting workers, clients, and shareholders. Grayson watched my first press conference from his parents' living room. I wore a navy suit and stood behind a podium bearing Meridian's logo. There was no glamour in the room. Only reporters, employees, and the hard work of restoring trust. Yet to Grayson, I looked like a stranger. The woman on the screen spoke clearly about governance, restitution, and accountability. She answered technical questions without notes. Senior executives who would once have ignored a stay-at-home mother listened to every word. She never talked like that at home, Eleanor muttered. Arthur did not take his eyes from the television. No one at home listened. Grayson shut off the screen. 2 weeks later, I flew to Chicago for the first board meetings. Lily remained in London with a caregiver she knew and trusted, and Richard's wife invited her to stay at their home for the weekend. I promised to call every morning and evening. Returning to Chicago felt less like coming home than entering a preserved version of someone else's life. The airport shop where Belle had mocked me was still there. The road from O'Hare looked unchanged, yet I was no longer measuring my value through the eyes of the Miller family. On my third day, Meridian's lawyers scheduled a settlement conference concerning the company's civil claims. Grayson attended with his criminal and civil attorneys. Arthur and Eleanor were present because they had personally guaranteed the business loan whose proceeds had been transferred into North Star. Belle came as their driver and emotional support, though her own credit card debts were unrelated to Meridian. I did not arrange the conference for dramatic effect. The court encouraged settlement. The company wanted to recover assets without years of litigation, and Grayson's lawyers hoped cooperation might help at sentencing. Still, when I entered Meridian's executive conference room, the silence felt staged by fate. Grayson sat on the far side of the long table. He looked smaller than I remembered. His expensive haircut had grown out. His face was gray with exhaustion, and the electronic monitor beneath his trouser leg created a slight bulge above his shoe. Eleanor wore the same pearl earrings she had worn the night of the divorce, but the rest of her clothes were inexpensive and ill-fitting. Arthur had lost weight. Belle stared at me openly. My attorney introduced everyone, then identified me as Meridian's chief restructuring officer and the board representative authorized to evaluate any proposed settlement. Eleanor's mouth fell open. She decides? Belle asked. The independent board must approve final terms, the attorney said. Then it will present the company's recommendation. Grayson's gaze remained fixed on me. Ara. This is a formal conference, I said. Please direct comments through counsel. Eleanor leaned toward her lawyer and, she's enjoying this. Look at her. I was not enjoying it. I could see the dining room table, the champagne glasses, and Lily holding my dress. I could hear Grayson saying that I would return within a week. Part of me wanted to ask whether freedom had become everything he expected, but the woman I had become did not need the satisfaction of humiliating a defeated man. Meridian's attorney summarized the claims. The company sought restitution for uninsured losses, investigation costs, and damage caused by fraudulent transactions. Grayson faced personal liability based on his admissions and documents. Arthur and Eleanor risked losing the collateral pledged for the loan they had guaranteed. The company's proposal required full financial disclosure, surrender of assets purchased with diverted funds, cooperation against Russo, and consent to a civil judgment for the remaining loss. In exchange, Meridian would not seek additional punitive damages against Arthur and Eleanor beyond the guaranteed amount, provided they had not participated knowingly. We will lose our house, Eleanor said. Her attorney touched her arm, but she pulled away. That house is my entire life. Ara lived there for 15 years. How can she sit there and let strangers take it? I answered because the question was directed at me. The bank, not Meridian, holds the mortgage on your house. You and Arthur pledged the remaining equity to secure a private loan for Grayson's investment. I did not sign that loan. I did not know it existed. But you have money, she said. You could pay it. I paid your bills for years, because you were part of the family. And when I stopped being useful, you told me to leave with nothing. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. I was excited about the baby. Chloe deceived all of us. Chloe did not make you tell Lily that a boy was a proper heir. The room became completely still. Eleanor looked down. Arthur Ara, I owe you an apology. This conference is not about apologies. Mine is. His hands shook on the table. I told myself I was keeping the peace. In truth, I let Eleanor and Grayson mistreat you because confronting them was uncomfortable. Then I called you at the airport and asked you to return, not because it was safe for you, but because I was afraid of embarrassment. I failed you and Lily. His words did not repair the past, but unlike Grayson's pleas, they named the harm without asking me to erase the consequences. Thank you for saying that, I replied. I hope you remember it when Lily is old enough to decide whether she wants a relationship with you. Grayson finally spoke to his lawyer, who nodded permission. Can I say something to Ara? My attorney looked at me. I agreed. Grayson folded his hands as if he could hold them still by force. I was wrong about you. I didn't know what you had achieved. If I had known, none of this would have happened. The sentence hurt more than an insult because it revealed that he still did not understand. If you had known I earned more money, you might have treated me better, I said. That is not the same as loving me. I deserved respect when you believed I had no income. Lily deserved love when you believed another child would be a boy. Your mistake was not failing to recognize that I was impressive. Your mistake was believing people without power could be treated as if they had no value. His face crumpled. I loved you. You loved what I did for you. Give me another chance. After the case, after I serve whatever time they give me, we could start over. I could come to London. I could be a father to Lily. You can work through the court and her therapist if you want to rebuild a relationship with Lily. But you and I will never start over. Because of Chloe? Because of you. He lowered his head and began to cry. Belle shifted in her chair. What happens to us if we sign? Meridian's lawyer explained that Belle was not a defendant in the company's case. Her personal debts remained her responsibility. Arthur and Eleanor would likely need to sell their home voluntarily to satisfy the bank and avoid foreclosure costs. They might retain a small amount for modest housing if the sale price was sufficient. Grayson would surrender his car, watch, investment interests, and any claim to funds recovered from North Star. The civil judgment would remain after bankruptcy to the extent the court found it arose from fraud.n. The explanation was serious without being theatrical. No one promised lifelong starvation or described poverty as entertainment. The law was not revenge. It was simply the mechanism by which people could no longer force others to absorb the cost of their choices. N. Eleanor. I can't live in a little apartment. N. Arthur turned toward her. Then you should not have signed a loan against the house without reading it. We did exactly what Grayson did. We believed profit would protect us from consequences. N. And for once, she had no answer. N. The conference paused while the Miller family met privately with counsel. I stood by the window overlooking the Chicago River. My attorney joined me. N. You handled that well, she said. N. And I wanted it to feel better. N. And accountability rarely feels as satisfying as people imagine. N. Then why do I feel guilty? N. Because you once loved them. Guilt is not proof that your boundary is wrong. Sometimes it is only grief for the fact that the boundary became necessary. N. When the family returned, Grayson authorized his lawyers to negotiate from Meridian's proposal. Arthur and Eleanor agreed to provide records and sell the house. No one thanked me. I did not need them to. Nas. The meeting ended. Grayson stood near the door while his attorney gathered papers. N. Did Lily ask about me? He said. N. She asks why you haven't apologized. N. Looked toward the floor. Tell her I'm sorry. N. Write it yourself. No excuses, no promises, and no request that she comfort you. Her therapist will decide when she is ready to read it. Do you think she'll forgive me? That is not something you are entitled to know in advance. I walked out of the room. In the elevator, my reflection looked calm. Only my hands revealed the effort it had taken. The doors opened into the lobby where dozens of Meridian employees were leaving for the evening. A woman in her 60s approached me hesitantly. Ms. Bennett? My name is Nora. I've worked in payroll for 32 years. My pension was invested in the fund connected to North Star. I just wanted to say thank you for finding the money. The recovery team and federal investigators found it, I said. I only helped identify the path. Maybe, but you looked when other people didn't. She squeezed my hand and left. That brief exchange mattered more than watching Grayson cry. It reminded me what the investigation was really for. The numbers on my screens represented people who had worked, saved, and trusted others to act honestly. Grayson had treated their money the way he treated my labor, as something available for his ambitions, because he assumed the person behind it could not stop him. The next morning, The Meridian Board approved the settlement framework. Vance Capital completed the first phase of its rescue financing, and employee retirement accounts were restored in full. Regulators kept the recovered Russo funds in escrow while victims from several schemes submitted claims. I flew back to London that afternoon. Lily ran into my arms at the airport. "You came back when you promised," she said. "Always." "Did you see Daddy?" "Yes." "Was he mean?" "No, he was sad." "Because he misses us?" I chose my answer carefully. "Because he is beginning to understand what his choices cost." She leaned back to study my face. "Are you sad too?" "A little." "Then we can be sad together." The words echoed what I had told her at the airport weeks before. I kissed her forehead. "And we can still be brave," I said. The criminal cases unfolded over the following months. Vincent Russo pleaded guilty after investigators connected the files on his drive to frauds involving 6 companies. Assets from his accounts were recovered through court orders and distributed among the victims. His agreement required a substantial prison sentence and forfeiture of everything traceable to the schemes. Chloe eventually cooperated. She admitted that she had concealed the timing of her pregnancy and used Grayson's belief in his paternity to push him toward divorce and deeper involvement with Northstar. A DNA test after the baby's birth confirmed that Grayson was not the father. The child's father was a man unconnected to the fraud who requested privacy and later sought a lawful custody arrangement. Chloe's pregnancy had always been real. The lie concerned paternity, dates, and motive. Her cooperation reduced her sentence, but it did not erase her role in the conspiracy. Grayson also accepted a plea agreement. The evidence showed that Russo had manipulated him, but it also showed deliberate theft, false records, and a secret promise of personal ownership. At sentencing, several Meridian employees described the fear of losing retirement savings accumulated over decades. Grayson apologized, though his first draft still blamed Chloe. His attorney made him rewrite it. The judge sentenced him to prison, ordered restitution, and prohibited him from holding a position involving fiduciary control after his release. The civil judgment would follow him for years. It was not the endless theatrical punishment Eleanor once imagined for other people. It was a real consequence, measured in lost freedom, lost trust, and the obligation to repay what he had taken. Arthur and Eleanor sold their house before the bank could foreclose. After the loans, taxes, and legal expenses were paid, they had enough left to rent a modest apartment. Belle found full-time work and entered a repayment plan for her credit cards. Social invitations disappeared, luxury purchases ended, and the family discovered that the ordinary lives they had mocked required discipline they had never learned. Arthur wrote to me once. He did not ask for money. He said he had begun counseling and hoped that, if Lily ever wanted contact, he could prove through patience that he had changed. I saved the letter for the future. Eleanor sent 6 messages. The first accused me of destroying the family. The second insisted she had always loved Lily. The third asked for help with rent. The remaining messages alternated between apology and blame. I forwarded them to my attorney and blocked the number. Grayson's letter to Lily arrived through her therapist. It was only 1 page. "I am sorry I made you feel that being a girl made you less important. That was cruel and untrue. I am sorry I hurt your mother and made our home frightening. None of it was your fault. You do not have to forgive me or write back. I will keep working to become someone who can tell you the truth." Lily read it twice, then folded it carefully. "Do I have to answer?" she asked. "No." "Can I answer later?" "Yes." "Can I never answer?" "Yes." She placed the letter in a drawer beside her stuffed rabbit. "Then I'll decide when I'm bigger." I was proud of her in a way I could not put into words. At 7, she understood a freedom I had not claimed until 43. An apology could be received without granting access to the person who gave it. Our divorce became final in the spring. The court approved my primary custody of Lily and required Grayson's child support obligation to be recorded even while his income was limited. Any future payments would go directly into Lily's trust. I did not need the money, but child support was her right, not a favor for me to accept or reject. On the day the decree arrived, I expected to feel a dramatic release. Instead, I read it at my desk, signed the receipt, and returned to a risk report. The marriage had ended emotionally long before the court confirmed it. The document did not free me. I had freed myself when I walked out of the dining room holding Lily's hand. N meridian stabilized under the new board. I completed the Chicago restructuring phase and returned permanently to London as Chief Risk Officer for Vance Capital's international portfolio. For the first time in my career, I led analysts who knew my face as well as my work. I made a point of evaluating employees by results rather than visibility. Remote workers, caregivers, and people returning after long absences were not treated as less serious. I knew how easily talent could disappear when an institution measured commitment by who occupied a chair. The longest. N. Nalistair sometimes introduced me at conferences as the analyst who uncovered the Meridian fraud. I always corrected him. N. The team uncovered it, I would say. I recognized the first pattern. N. That answer was not false modesty. For years, I had worked alone because isolation felt safe. Building a team taught me that being capable did not mean carrying every burden without help. NBI. Early summer, Lily and I moved out of the company townhouse and into a home of our own in Richmond. It was smaller than the Miller house and more beautiful to me in every way. The front door was blue. The kitchen windows faced a narrow garden where Lily planted strawberries, and the room she chose had enough wall space for drawings, photographs, and a map of every place she hoped to visit. Non. Our first evening there, we sat on the floor eating takeaway because the dining table had not arrived. Rain tapped softly against the windows. N. Do you remember the rain when we came to London? Lily asked. N and I do. N and I was very cold. N and so was I. N but Mr. Stanley found us. N yes. N Nesha dipped a piece of bread into her soup. If he didn't find us, would we still be okay? I thought about the woman beneath the awning who had nearly mistaken one difficult hour for proof that Grayson had been right about her. It would have taken longer, I said. We would have asked for help, called the bank, and found another hotel. We were frightened, but we were never helpless. Lily smiled. Because you had a secret job? Not only because of that. Money and work gave us choices, but asking for help was also a choice. Leaving was a choice. Telling the truth was a choice. And omelets, she said seriously. Omelets were essential. She laughed so hard that soup nearly spilled onto the carpet. Later, after she fell asleep, I stood in the garden beneath a clearing sky. The years with Grayson no longer felt like a dark room I was trapped inside. They were behind me, visible but unable to close around me again. For a long time, I had believed my worth came from proving that I was more talented, more successful, or more powerful than the people who dismissed me. Success helped restore what I had abandoned, but it was not the reason I deserved dignity. I deserved dignity when I was earning 6 figures in secret. I deserved it when I was washing dishes. I deserved it when I was frightened at Heathrow with a disconnected phone and 2 useless cards. Lily deserved it simply because she existed. That was the truth Grayson never understood until it was too late. The next afternoon, I collected Lily from school. She ran through the gate with a paper rainbow she had painted in class. It's for the new house, she said. Rainbows come after bad weather. Sometimes they do, and sometimes you make one with paint. I looked at the uneven colors, the blue streak on her sleeve, and the pride in her face. That's even better, I said. We walked home beneath the trees, her small hand secure in mine. No one was waiting there to judge the dinner, demand silence, or explain why we should be grateful for cruelty. The blue door belonged to us. The life behind it belonged to us too. I had left Chicago believing I was escaping the ruins of a marriage. In London, I discovered I was returning to the woman I had been before anyone taught her to disappear. I was not Grayson's discarded wife, Eleanor's failed daughter-in-law, or the invisible analyst behind another person's success. I was Ara Bennett. I was Lily's mother. I was the architect of my own future. And this time, I would never sign that future over to anyone else.